Today I'm going to pull back the curtain and give sports fans a behind-the-scenes look at what is really going on when they watch a sporting event or listen to a sports program. It's going to ruffle some feathers, but that's okay. Let's get to it. Every year around this time, I like to do a video or write an article about answering the question, are sports broadcasters truly independent? This is Independence Day, the time of the year, and I like sports fans to think about this. And here's what I mean. When you tune into a game, what is the filter through which you're getting the action? Meaning if you turn on the radio, the television, log into the internet somewhere, you're getting a story. You're getting a version of something that's happening. But how can you always trust that that's the true version? That that is the real way that things are happening, authentic and unadulterated. Well, we're going to talk about that today because it's something that every sports fan should be aware of. And I know there's going to be some people that leave me comments or contact me on the side and say, Rick, you can't talk about this. You can't do a program about this. You can't let these secrets out. But that's okay. I think it's important. I think it'll make you a better sports fan. And for those sports broadcasters out there, certainly those that are aspiring to be in the career, it's going to make you a better sports broadcaster. So let's talk about this a little bit more in depth. I remember more than a decade ago at Sportscasters Club, I wrote an article and the title was, Are Sports Broadcasters Independent? And I was trying to do a cute little play on words. It was Independence Day, 4th of July. And my question was, as a sportscaster, do you have control over your career ultimately? And do you have control over what you say? Do you have control over what you do, your actions, the things you talk about, how you frame your opinions, how you frame a story? And I really enjoyed writing about that. Ultimately, the conclusion I came to then, which is one I want to expand on now for sports fans, is that in most instances, no, I as the sportscaster was not independent. And here's what I mean. When you work for a team, ultimately there's someone who pays your check. There's someone who pays you. And that person ultimately is in charge of the material that goes out, in charge of the product. And most broadcasters do learn this somewhere along their career. It's not always a bad thing, but it's something you have to learn as a professional. When I first began broadcasting minor league baseball, I worked for 2 different organizations over 7 years. The first one, not once in years, ever told me what to say on the air. Never told me to say only positive, rainbows and unicorns, happy things about the team. They never did. So during the years where the team was outstanding, I talked about it as such. And hopefully my listeners understood that I was being authentic and truthful with them. And then during the years where the team was subpar, mediocre, or even horrible, I was also honest with them about that. And hopefully those loyal listeners that were with me throughout that entire time, hopefully that gave me some credibility in their eyes. And they knew that I was being truthful, I was being clear, I was being authentic in relaying the information to them. My former broadcast partner, Bill Rogan, and I always used to talk about how praise without criticism is hollow. And what does that mean? That means that if all I do is tell you how great you are, or how great someone is, or how wonderful something is, without ever any criticism or constructive feedback, then all that praise is hollow. So what Bill and I felt, and what I feel still, is that by being authentic and being honest and clear and open, people know that when you say something is great, it's really great. And when you say something is not so, then it's not so. And it's all about being authentic, truthful, and open with your audience. So for those years I was with that team, they never told me what to say. I was free to explain what I was seeing, talk about the team, talk about the league, and my listeners got an unvarnished truth of what was going on. Then I worked for another minor league baseball team, and from day one, they were much more micromanaging and controlling about what I said, about how I framed things, about how I couched my opinions. In fact, opinion was not something that was really recommended. And it really came to a head one day when an executive pulled me aside in between innings and chastised me because I had the audacity of telling fans what I saw in the stands as it was 30 or 40 degrees out there in April. And I was explaining how cold it was and how fans were bundled up, and a gentleman with his daughter were bundled up in a big parka and also an overcoat and a blanket covering them, and I could see their breath drifting through the air. And I explained it. I painted the word picture for my audience on the radio, and the executive pulled me aside. He was right there. We went to commercial. He was right there. And he said, "Rick, you can't talk about this. You can't talk about the weather." And I said, my listeners are smart enough to know that it's April in the Northeast and it's cold out here, and I'm painting that picture for them. The team's vantage point was obviously that if I spoke this way, it was going to dissuade fans from wanting to come out to the games in April. They weren't going to want to come because I was telling them how miserable and cold it was. I gave my listeners more credit than that. People are obviously smart. They make decisions in the winter and the spring because they know the cadence of the weather, the cadence of the seasons. I gave them that benefit of the doubt. But this was just an example where ultimately, as a broadcaster, I was the broadcaster. I was employed by the organization. That organization gets to make their rules. I do firmly believe in that. I firmly believe in free enterprise and who's owning the organization, who writes the check, who pays you, and that was an agreement. And at any point, the broadcaster can say, you know what, I'm not going to work under that agreement. Ethically, it doesn't feel right to me. I'm going to leave. But as long as you're taking that paycheck, you are emboldened to them to a degree. So I learned that lesson early in my career. Ironically enough, you'll like this fact, I then went on to work for a number of years for Army Sports at West Point, broadcasting basketball, hockey, helping on the football broadcasts. And Army, the United States Military Academy, West Point, the United States government apparatus. You would think that that would be the place that was the most controlling, the most conservative in the way they wanted their product broadcast. And I can tell you there's not one time, this is really cool, not one time did they ever tell me what to say or what not to say. It was amazing because I always heard about the generals that would listen and the high brass and the athletic directors and all the important people who would listen to our basketball, our hockey broadcasts. And I always heard that they would let you know and they would control the message that went out and how they framed it. Never once happened. This was in the late 90s. Never once happened. So I always gave them a lot of credit for that because they never told me, Rick, and the team was not good. The basketball team that I broadcast on a daily basis at the time, great bunch of guys I had great relationships with, but they were not a successful team on the court. In fact, Chris Patola was the point guard of that team, and he's gone on to have an outstanding career as a broadcaster himself. You probably know him from talk shows and television work, and he's done a lot of great philanthropy and work in the North Carolina area as well. But he was on that team, and it was a great bunch of guys. And I broadcast, honestly, talked about what was happening. Obviously, that the team lost more than it won. That was the nature of the beast in the Patriot League, and a team that was competing against scholarships and top athletes. And these were guys that were, in the military academy, You give them so much credit for what they endure and the commitments they make, and then to come out and be competitive on the basketball court. But the point I'm making is that I told my listeners exactly the truth, unvarnished. I reported what was going on, good, bad, and ugly. There was a lot of good, some ugly, a lot of good. And the respect they got whenever we traveled around the country was amazing. But I was honest and clear and forthright about all of it. And hopefully my listeners appreciated that. Because then when I said something great about Chris Spatola or any of the other players on that team, hopefully they knew it was true, because I was not sugarcoating anything. And there was a lot more good to report than bad, but I was honest always. So those 3 stops that I had personally, you can see how there were different approaches. One, let me the free rein to say anything. The second, much more controlling. And the third, again, not controlling at all. So, as a broadcaster, still I had learned that lesson that truly sports broadcasters are not independent. And so that's how I took it from the lens of an aspiring sports media professional. But now I want to turn this discussion to how we approach this as sports fans. How does this impact us as sports fans? And I'm going to talk about that in depth in just a second.
When you're done with this episode, or even if you want to open your browser now, you can go deeper and learn the secrets of sports broadcasting. Search our full list of books at sportscastersclub.com. Available from Amazon and Kindle, paperback, and Audible format.
Okay, so you tune into your favorite sporting event. You're excited about it. The game comes on. The broadcaster's there, whether it's on television or radio. Are they giving you the truth? Are they giving you the complete, unvarnished truth? Based on the conversation we've had for the last 10 minutes, talking about how independent are sportscasters, how much autonomy do they really have? Can you answer that question? The point I'm trying to make to you as a sports fan is that everything you take in is being filtered. Everything. And we've seen this in news media, over the past decades, where it's making people question a lot of things. The company line that we're given, is that really the truth? Is this really the way that facts and happenings are unfolding? Social media and certain social media outlets are truly becoming places for freedom, where you can get all sides of a story and then make up your own opinion, which in my judgment, that's the job of a journalist. Report the facts, give the information, and let the viewer or the listener make their own opinion. So in terms of sports, we have to understand that as fans, we are getting it through a lens. We are getting it through a frame of reference. So when we tune into a game, sometimes you might find yourself thinking, man, this is all fluff and happiness and everything is great when I watch this team's games, even though the team is sub 500. Well, think about that. Maybe you're getting the information through a frame that wants to paint that rosy picture. I was just listening to a national broadcast recently, and the broadcaster was, I thought, phenomenal, because I couldn't tell which team he was more enthusiastic about. It was going back and forth. The score was changing. Different team was taking the lead. And he was just as enthusiastic about one as the other. And as a national broadcaster, that's really your job. It's to objectively throw it out there. And you want both teams' fan bases angry because it sounds like you're a fan of the other team or you're a fan of this team. And the point is, you're trying to be objective and just report it as it is rather than favoring one side or another. There are some top broadcasters that I've seen, that I know personally, that grew up as fans of a certain team. And I've seen them broadcast that team's action on the field. And I sit back and think, can I tell that he's a fan of that team? And when I can't tell, that's a good job. because that means they're not letting their bias influence the way they're reporting. But the point I'm making is that as a sports fan, when you tune into a play-by-play broadcast, you've got to consider who is the person doing the talking, who influences them, and who ultimately decides what they say. I have great respect for the broadcasters that are very clear that they're going to be honest, and those are the conditions with which they're going to broadcast this event. And they make it very honest to those signing the checks beforehand. That's fantastic, because that ultimately gives the viewer or the listener the best product and the most honest product. So that's important to keep in mind. Same holds true for talk shows, because program directors can certainly influence what people say and do. I think most program directors, the vast majority, do not curtail their hosts in terms of what opinions they should voice and what they should think about things. So most of them, I don't think, do that. I think they want opinion. They want divergent thought. Sometimes they want disagreement. They want argument. They want back and forth, because that makes for great radio. So they certainly don't want bland. And so in terms of your opinion about the sport, they usually do not control in that regard. They can sometimes curtail your approach, and that's usually more nuts and bolts of a broadcasting capability. How you speak, how you go in and out of commercials, how you work with a partner or a guest or anything like that. That's, in my experience, where they'll have more control. But in terms of what you actually think about the sport, they usually don't get too much into it. But let's say there's a segment where every week you have the coach of a team on, or the manager of a team. And if you're overly critical of that person, and that's a money-making opportunity for the station, there can be some gray area there where they put a little pressure on you to be more positive to that guest, because it's a feature that's being sold and it's a moneymaker for the broadcasting outlet. So I think the point I'm making today is that sportscasters are never truly independent. Although online, on YouTube, you can be as independent as you want, which is why you're here with Sportscasters Club, because there's nobody pulling the puppet strings, telling us what to say. But when you watch a broadcast on television, listen to it on radio, there's always, I won't say always, there's just about always some kind of influence that is keeping the broadcaster in a window. Whether it's a team ownership, whether it's a station ownership, whether it's a network ownership, oftentimes there are. Doesn't mean that every broadcaster is tainted. It doesn't mean that you're always getting bias, that you're always getting a slanted view, that you're always getting, I mean, that happens a lot in news, as we've seen. But in sports, it happens as well. Doesn't mean it's always going to affect your overall enjoyment of the game, but it can. So as fans, we need to know this. We need to keep it in mind. So when we have a broadcaster telling us how great something is, and we know there's something just doesn't feel right, it's not us. It's probably true. Probably something isn't right. So I just want you to know this as a fan. It's important, because our goal here is not only to make you a better sportscaster, if that's your career, but to make you a better sports fan as well. So if you are a sportscaster, or if you're in sports media, leave me a comment. Let me know where I'm right, where I'm wrong. And if you're a sports fan, please do the same. Let me know what you've seen, what your experience has been, and if you think sportscasters are truly independent. We give our opinion here, and I'd love to hear yours as well. If we've never met, my name is Rick. Thanks for joining us here at Sportscasters Club. We've got a lot at the website. And until next time, so long.
Thanks for listening to the Sportscasters Club radio show at sportscastersclub.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an episode. And thanks for liking, sharing, posting reviews, and spreading the word.